My friends, let's get real for a moment. You've sensed the chemistry. You've noticed the way he looks at you. There's that tension, that pull. And maybe, just maybe, you know he craves you. But then, silence. Days go by. No message, no initiative, just radio silence. We often grow up believing that when someone deeply desires us, they will pursue us, show up for us, and make their intentions known. It feels logical. Desire should lead to action, right? If he craves you, shouldn't he call, text, make plans, step forward? But in the real world, especially in the realm of romantic relationships, this logic often breaks down. Desire is an emotion, it's internal, it's about how someone feels. But action is a decision. It requires more than just feeling, it requires courage, clarity, and in many cases, emotional maturity. That's where the gap forms. The place where someone may want you deeply, but never actually move towards you in a meaningful way. Craving someone is like being hungry. You can feel it in your gut. But just because you're hungry doesn't mean you're going to walk into the kitchen, gather ingredients, cook a full meal, and clean up afterward. Sometimes you just stay on the couch, scrolling your phone, hungry but inactive. People do the same thing emotionally. They feel the craving, but they don't take the steps to fulfill it, especially when those steps involve vulnerability, effort, or potential rejection. And this is where many people get confused, especially when there's chemistry. Maybe he looks at you a certain way. Maybe you've had deep conversations, shared late night laughs, or exchanged moments that felt electric. You interpret those signals to mean he must want this. And you may be right, he does. But here's the crucial distinction. Just because someone wants something doesn't mean they're going to claim it. In and of itself is passive. It's only potential energy. It only becomes meaningful when it's converted into motion. And that motion is effort, consistency, and forward momentum in a relationship. So when someone craves you but stays silent, it's not because you imagine the desire. It's because he hasn't crossed the bridge from emotion to action. Why doesn't he cross it? There are several reasons, none of which have to do with your value. Fear of rejection, fear of being vulnerable, fear of not being enough, or of having to step into something real and grown up. For others, it's timing. They may be in a place emotionally where they're not ready to hold space for someone else's heart, even if they're deeply drawn to it. Some men crave the idea of a connection more than the reality of building one. It's easier to romanticize someone from a distance than to show up for them consistently. Another reason is uncertainty. He may crave you, but still be unsure of what he wants overall. That creates hesitation, and hesitation breeds silence. Not because he's indifferent, but because he's unresolved within himself. He hasn't made peace with what he's truly seeking, so he doesn't know how to commit to something, even something he deeply desires. This is why it's so important not to measure your worth by someone's emotional craving. Craving can be intense but fleeting. It can exist even in people who are emotionally unavailable or inconsistent. You can be everything someone wants and still not be chosen, not because you lack anything, but because they lack readiness. You stop making it about you. You stop wondering what you did wrong or what you should fix. You start seeing the difference between interest and intention, and you begin holding out for more than just silent longing. You wait for someone who acts, not just someone who feels. So the next time you sense that someone craves you but does nothing about it, ask yourself, is this someone who's ready to love me out loud? Or are they just silently wrestling with emotions they don't yet know how to honor? Because you deserve more than craving. You deserve someone who moves toward you, who shows up, who speaks their desire with actions, not silence. Would you like me to expand the second keynote now? Here's a fully expanded version of the second keynote. Silence is often a reflection of his readiness, not your worth, in an educational tone up to 700 words. When someone goes quiet on you, especially someone you felt a genuine connection with, it's easy to internalize that silence. You might think, did I say something wrong? Was I not enough? What changed? This is a normal response. As human beings, we naturally want to assign meaning to behavior. And when someone suddenly goes quiet, we often make ourselves the reason. But here's a powerful truth. When a man goes silent, it's usually not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of his emotional state. His silence doesn't say, "You're not worth calling." It says, "I'm not ready to show up." That difference is everything. We often believe that if someone sees how great we are, how loving, supportive, intelligent, or beautiful, we can somehow earn their consistency. But emotional readiness doesn't work like that. Readiness isn't about what you bring to the table. It's about whether someone is emotionally prepared to sit at the table and engage with presence, honesty, and effort. Let's break this down further. When a man is silent, many women instantly assume they are being rejected. And in some cases they are, but not because they're lacking in any way. More often than not, the man is retreating, not rejecting. He may be overwhelmed. He may be conflicted. He may be dealing with his own internal doubts or fears that he hasn't figured out how to process. Silence becomes the easiest escape. It's important to recognize that silence is often a coping mechanism. Some people were never taught how to communicate discomfort or uncertainty in a healthy way. So instead of expressing, "I'm feeling unsure," or "I need space to figure things out," they simply disappear. They go inward, hoping the situation will resolve itself or fade away. But the absence of communication is still communication. It tells you that he's not ready to meet the emotional standard required for a relationship of depth. This is why your worth should never be measured by someone else's silence. Just because someone doesn't call you doesn't mean you're not worthy of being called. Just because someone doesn't pursue you doesn't mean you're not desirable. We need to stop taking someone's lack of effort and turning it into a story about our inadequacy. Here's another way to look at it. Imagine you give someone the key to a beautiful home. That home is you, your energy, your heart, your emotional presence. But they walk in, look around, and leave without saying a word. That doesn't mean the home wasn't beautiful. It means they weren't ready to live in it. Maybe they weren't ready for the responsibility. Maybe they didn't feel they deserved it. Or maybe they were just used to chaos and couldn't handle peace. Either way, the home doesn't become less valuable because someone couldn't appreciate it. When someone is emotionally unavailable, it doesn't matter how emotionally available you are. You could be perfect on paper, patient, kind, communicative, attractive, and they still won't be able to meet you where you are. And rather than admit this, many will simply go quiet. Their silence spares them the discomfort of vulnerability, but it also leaves you holding the emotional weight of confusion and self-doubt, if you let it. So here's what you must remember. His silence is his story, not your verdict. Don't waste your energy trying to decode what you did to deserve it. Instead, use that energy to ground yourself in reality. What is he showing you with his actions or lack of them? If he's gone quiet, if he's inconsistent, if he's unavailable, then he's showing you where he stands emotionally. Your job isn't to fix his silence or coax him into showing up. Your job is to respond to reality, not fantasy. Don't wait for someone to realize your worth. Live in a way that reflects you already know it. Because when a man is ready, truly ready, he won't go quiet. He'll lean in, he'll make space, he'll communicate even if it's imperfect. Silence won't be his language, effort will. And until that man shows up, here's an expanded version of the third keynote, The Craving Gap Explained, in an educational and insightful tone, up to 700 words. There's a frustrating experience many people go through in dating or relationships. You feel that someone wants you, desires you, maybe even feels something deep when they're with you, but their actions don't match those emotions. One moment, it feels electric, the chemistry is undeniable, the connection real, and then, just as quickly, they pull away, withdraw, or stay stuck in a pattern of inconsistency. It leaves you wondering, if he craves me, why does he hold back? You need to understand the concept of the craving gap. This is the space between what someone feels and what they're willing and able to do about it. And it's bigger and more common than you might think. Emotional craving is not the same as emotional readiness. Craving is about the longing for connection, closeness, intimacy. It's that internal pull towards someone that can feel intoxicating, magnetic, even obsessive. But readiness requires far more than longing. It demands emotional stability, self-awareness, a willingness to be vulnerable, and a commitment to showing up consistently, not just when it's easy or exciting, but also when it's uncomfortable or uncertain. Many people exist in this craving gap without realizing it. They crave love, but fear vulnerability. They want closeness, but dread the responsibilities that come with true connection. They yearn for someone, but feel overwhelmed by what it might mean to actually have them. This is where the gap becomes dangerous, especially if you're on the receiving end of it. When a man craves you but lives in that gap, he can't fully step into anything meaningful. You'll get glimpses of his feelings, how he looks at you, how present he is in the moment, how safe or seen you feel with him. But it's always temporary. He'll retreat, he'll overthink, he'll sabotage, not because you did something wrong, but because he is standing in the emotional space between desire and capacity. Think of it like someone staring through the window of a beautiful home. He loves the view, admires the furniture, imagines what it would be like to live there. But when he's handed the key, he hesitates. Why? Because living inside that home means taking care of it. It means commitment, responsibility, and maybe confronting parts of himself he's avoided for years. So instead, he stays outside, close enough to see it, far enough to avoid it. He still craves it. Craving doesn't go away just because someone avoids action. In fact, that unfulfilled desire can grow stronger, but unless the person bridges the gap with readiness, the desire stays trapped inside. No matter how real the craving feels, if it's not accompanied by courage and effort, it remains a fantasy. This is why it's so crucial not to overvalue the intensity of someone's craving. It can feel flattering, even addictive, to know someone desires you deeply. But it's not the craving that makes a relationship. It's what they do with it. Does he turn that desire into effort? Does he meet you where you are? Or does he stay stuck in his own internal conflict, unable to bring his feelings to life? The craving gap is where confusion is born. It's where hot and cold behavior comes from. One day he's all in, the next day he's distant. You feel the emotional spark, but not the stability. You experience connection, but not consistency. And that's not just frustrating, it's exhausting. You have to stop focusing on whether someone feels strongly about you and start looking at whether they're showing up for you. Because unless someone has done the emotional work to close that craving gap, they will stay stuck in a cycle of longing and retreat, and you'll be stuck waiting for them to catch up emotionally. You deserve someone who doesn't just feel deeply, but follows through consistently, who bridges that gap between want and action, between fantasy and reality. Someone who knows how to take the beautiful, overwhelming feeling of craving and use it to build something real with you. Don't confuse desire with direction. Look for someone whose actions walk in step with their emotions. That's when craving becomes connection. That's when love becomes real. Force. It is the expanded version of the fourth keynote. Mixed signals are signals in a clear and educational tone, up to 700 words. One of the most confusing and emotionally draining experiences in dating is dealing with someone who sends mixed signals. One day they're warm, affectionate, and attentive. The next, they're distant, unavailable, or completely silent. You're left in a mental tug of war, trying to figure out what's real and what's not. You replay their words, overanalyze their texts, and search for hidden meaning in their behavior. You tell yourself, maybe he's just scared, or maybe I'm reading too much into it. But here's the truth that will save you from months or even years of emotional limbo. Mixed signals are signals. Inconsistency is not confusion, it's communication. When someone is giving you a hot and cold experience, they are telling you something loud and clear, even if it's not with words. Their inconsistency is revealing their inner conflict, their ambivalence, or their lack of clarity about what they want. The danger lies in thinking that their moments of warmth cancel out their periods of absence or emotional detachment, but they don't. The inconsistency is the message. When someone is truly ready to connect, they don't leave you constantly wondering where you stand. They don't disappear for days and then come back with just enough charm to keep you engaged. They don't play emotional hide and seek. Real interest, real emotional availability has a rhythm to it. It's steady, grounded, and reliable. It doesn't create chaos or confusion. It builds trust. But many people are emotionally inconsistent because they themselves are emotionally unsettled. They crave connection, but they also fear it. They want intimacy, but they're terrified of what it might reveal about them. So they approach you when it feels good, when the stakes are low, or when they're lonely, and they pull away when it starts to feel real. When emotions deepen, or when they sense that you're starting to expect more than they're prepared to give. This creates a cycle that can be addictive for the person on the receiving end. The emotional high of closeness is so intense that you become hooked on it. Even though it's surrounded by unpredictable lows, you begin to crave the validation of the on moments, hoping that if you're patient enough, kind enough, understanding enough, those moments will become more frequent, but they rarely do. In fact, the more you tolerate inconsistency, the more it continues. Here's something essential to understand. Clarity is an act of respect. If someone values you and is ready for a relationship, they will be clear with you. Their words will match their actions. They won't keep you guessing. And if someone is making you guess, if you're constantly unsure of their feelings, their availability, or their intentions, then that is your answer. Mixed signals are not a sign to try harder. They're not a puzzle you need to solve. They're a red flag waving right in front of you. Not because the person is necessarily malicious or manipulative. Often they're just emotionally confused or unavailable, but because their behavior will never create the safety and certainty required for a healthy relationship. Don't settle for someone whose interest only shows up in moments. Don't cling to the potential you see in them when their actions keep showing you inconsistency. And most importantly, don't make excuses for behavior that leaves you emotionally drained. You deserve clarity. You deserve consistency. You deserve to feel chosen, not just sometimes, but all the time. When someone is ready, you won't need to decode them. You won't need to wonder whether they care or whether you're too much for asking for basic emotional presence. They will show you how they feel with steady, grounded effort. No guessing games, no back and forth, no emotional roller coasters. Mixed signals are a signal that someone isn't ready for what you're ready for. And when you recognize that, you stop wasting energy on their confusion and start making room for someone who brings clarity. Here's the fully expanded version of the fifth keynote. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate in a direct and educational tone, up to 700 words. There's a powerful truth about relationships that often gets overlooked. People learn how to treat you based on what you accept, not what you say you want, not what you hope for, but what you consistently tolerate. In the early stages of dating, or even in long-term dynamics, you're not just getting to know someone, they're getting to know you too. And everything you let slide, every boundary you don't reinforce, every moment you excuse inconsistent behavior, teaches them what's okay in their relationship with you. This doesn't mean you're responsible for someone else's poor behavior, but it does mean you're responsible for how long you allow it to continue in your life. If a man craves you, yet remains silent, distant, or inconsistent, and you continue to respond, engage, or stay emotionally invested, then you unintentionally send the message, this is acceptable. Silence can become a pattern because silence has no cost. Think about it in simple terms. If someone can give you half effort and still receive your full presence, why would they increase their effort? If their inconsistency is met with understanding, availability, and continued emotional access to you, there is no internal pressure for them to change. What's allowed is repeated, and it's human nature to follow the path of least resistance. This is why boundaries are not about punishing someone else. They're about protecting yourself. They are not demands that force someone to change. They are standards that define the level of treatment you're willing to receive. When you consistently uphold those standards, people who are not aligned with them will fall away, and people who are ready to meet them will step forward. Let's take a real world example. Suppose someone you're dating disappears for days without explanation and then returns, acting as if nothing happened. If you welcome them back with warmth, without expressing how that absence made you feel, they learn that emotional vanishing acts come with no consequence. Even if their craving for you is real, your silence in response to their absence validates the imbalance. You've unknowingly train them that their moments of connection are enough, even if surrounded by long stretches of emotional unavailability. Instead, you respond by communicating your boundaries clearly. I value consistency and communication. When you disappear, it makes me feel disrespected and uncertain. That's not the kind of connection I want. You create a point of clarity. You show them that your attention has a standard. You're not being rude, reactive, or dramatic. You're being emotionally self-respecting. It's not about playing games or issuing ultimatums. It's about knowing that craving without effort isn't enough. You deserve someone who chooses you with clarity, not someone who shows up only when it's convenient for them. And that choice is modeled through how you show up for yourself. A lot of people think that being patient or understanding will inspire someone to finally commit or get it together. But patience without boundaries often becomes self-abandonment. The longer you wait for someone to change while tolerating the same behavior, the more you reinforce the very dynamic you're hoping to escape. You have more power than you realize, not to change someone else, but to shape the space around you by how you allow others to interact with it. That space is sacred. It deserves honesty, consistency, and effort. And if someone can't bring that to the table, their craving isn't a gift, it's a distraction. Would you like me to now craft the full speech using all 5 expanded keynotes in Matthew Hussey's educational style?